Welcome to the Expat Empire Podcast, the podcast where you can hear from expats around the world and learn how you can join them. Hey guys, before we get to the interview, I want to remind you that we're offering free 30-minute consulting calls to anyone interested in moving abroad. Whether you're thinking about retiring somewhere warm, starting the next chapter of your international career, or even becoming a digital nomad, we're ready to help you think through the next steps in your journey. Send us a message at expatempire.com and schedule a call today. With that said, let's start the conversation. Hey Francis, thanks so much for joining us today on the Expat Empire Podcast.
David, thank you so much, man. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And you've been to some really cool spots. You've obviously traveled quite a bit. You've lived in some interesting places. So really excited to dive into that. And I guess to kick us off, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background, where you're originally from, where around the world you've lived so far, and where you are right now. That'd be great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And, as you said, I'm Francis. I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. I guess if you want to go all the way back, I was actually born in the Philippines, in Manila, but my family moved over to Memphis around the early 90s. I think I was around only about a year old or so. But lived there, my whole life. Went to school there, went to university in Mississippi. So I'm a bit of a Southern guy, more or less. It's kind of like my joke. I'm not sure if anyone is like listening to the audio, but I don't really look like your typical Tennessean, I suppose. But over the last few years, I've lived in Hungary, in Budapest, Hungary, and in Barcelona, Spain. And I run an online business working as a freelance email copywriter, email marketer, and strategist. I think we're going to dive into a bit of my journey today, but I think in a nutshell that explains who I am.
Yeah, awesome. That's definitely a great place for us to start. So it sounds like you were born outside the U.S. in the Philippines, I believe, and then moved into the U.S. and kind of grew up there. But would you say that sort of origin piece, even though you were probably too young to remember it, has anything to do with your desire to be abroad? Or what was that initial motivation or flame that really started your journey?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about because I'm not really sure what started that flame. I'm positive that something with my family being immigrants and kind of going back and forth between the States and the Philippines, it definitely had something to do with it. But I do remember just being like 6, 7 years old and looking outside of my window and being like, oh man, I really want to travel the world. I want to see what's out there. And I think it was slightly like crazy thoughts for someone who's only 6, 7, who's explored only the boundaries of my neighborhood on my bicycle or tricycle or something, So I think it definitely added to it. I think growing up, I went to different schools. My family moved around in Memphis a good amount. So I think this idea or this feeling of kind of always being out of my comfort zone and meeting new people and understanding people from different backgrounds and learning more about them. I think that's always interested me. And then, when I went to university and I actually took a class trip to Europe, we studied for about a month and a half in Germany and in Italy. I think something really struck a chord with me. And I was like, I really want to go somewhere else other than Jackson, Mississippi, where, I was at that time. So it was something that's been I've been feeding ever since I was a kid, but I think it's always been there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Was it those experiences specifically in Europe that made you think that Europe was the place for you, or were you open to kind of being anywhere in the world? How did you ultimately get your start in Budapest then?
Yeah, I think that trip, of course, it was the first kind of inkling of like, I want to go to Europe. I think only because that's the only place I've been. And I've been to parts of Asia, well, just the Philippines really, but just being in Europe, being 20 years old and just being so excited that I was doing something pretty cool. And I think that feeling has always like stuck with me. Of course, there's a lot of beauty in Europe with the beautiful buildings and the history. And I think I was always kind of interested in that. Growing up in Memphis, my favorite basketball player was Pau Gasol. And I was like, who's the Spanish guy who's like in Memphis? It's so crazy. So I think this feeling of Europe, of course, I've always been attracted to it, really loved the vibe. And Yeah, I mean, I never counted out Asia. That was actually a big part of my plan um, prior to settling down in Budapest.
Hmm.
Originally came here to teach English, and my whole plan was to teach English in 5 countries in 5 years. And after my plan was to
Oh, wow.
teach in Hungary for 1 year, and then eventually go to Asia, but then that never happened. So I just ended up falling in love with the city and settling here. So.
Yeah, that's great. And how many years has it been that you've been living there so far?
Oh man, I've been here 5 years now. I think, yeah, 5 years. I think 5 years next week. And yeah, I've been telling a lot of people that. It's kind of
Nice.
a people have been asking me that lately, and everyone kind of like even some of my friends who've been here for 2, 3 years or I've known for a while. They're just like, man, you've been here quite a while. Other people are like, we've been here quite a while. There's been a handful of guys here who've been here 5, 6 years as well. So um, yeah, it's
Yeah.
wild. It's wild to think about.
Here in Porto, when I have my meetup group, it's kind of funny because I started only a few months after I arrived here. But now it turns out that a year and a half here has made me a veteran in the city. Most people seem to have just arrived in the last weeks or last month or two. Obviously, the whole pandemic situation's made anything probably in between that and when I arrived more difficult. So it's understandable. But it's funny to think like when I'd say I've been here a year and a half, people are somehow amazed at my
Yeah,
seniority and my status in the Porto scene, even though I still feel very fresh and very new. So it's funny for me to meet people that are 5, 6, 10, years here in Portugal, and yeah, so I can understand people having that reaction to you as well.
oh for sure, for sure. It's funny. It's funny, but yeah, I've been here a while, man. Been here quite some time.
So how did you find that first job then, and ultimately why was Budapest the first place for you? Of course, you decided to stay in the end, but how did you think, hey, this is the place for me to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I found Budapest after spending 1 year in Barcelona working with a teaching company there called Medeas. I'm pretty sure that company's grown exponentially over the years, kind of to rival the Auxiliaris program. And so I wanted to continue living abroad. I didn't want to necessarily do it in Spain at that time because I was thinking I'm young. I should definitely go out and like see someplace else. And originally, I was going to move to Hong Kong. I had the okay
Hmm.
from another company. They were like, "Yeah, just sign this contract within the next 2.5 weeks, and you'll be good to go." And I don't know why, but I was, still hanging around like these ESL forums, and somebody mentioned that this company in Budapest was looking for teachers, and I kind of just thought it was a crazy idea. I was like, "Why don't I just apply?" and see if I get it. These hiring processes can be pretty quick, and they were really fast as well. And I went through 2 rounds of interviews. Sent some documents in, and I got it within like 10 days. And they offered me a contract, and I was like, "Oh, what do I choose? Do I go to Hong Kong or do I go to Budapest?" I have no idea. But I chose Budapest because I was originally supposed to go to Budapest for a trip with some friends, but then it got canceled. So I kind of had like this gut feeling of, oh, I should go to Budapest instead of Hong Kong.
Hmm.
And, maybe irresponsibly, I just jumped on it. I signed the paper like within 2 hours and was set. And then when I didn't even like Google or YouTube any videos of what Budapest was going to be like or anything. I was in my head, I thought it was going to be like super Soviet bloc, like crazy kind of
Hmm.
decrepit, but it wasn't like that at all. I come here and it's a bustling city. It's incredibly fun. It's modern. There's plenty of stuff to do. A lot of really cool people from literally everywhere are in Budapest. And that was 2016. And it's even grown a whole lot even more since then. And that's one of the reasons why I fell in love with it and stayed. It's just because, one, it's beautiful, but, and I was in my kind of mid to early 20s. I was just having a great time, meeting people from everywhere and kind of diving into the scene. And then I've just stayed ever since. And for me, I consider it home. Just as much as I do Memphis and anywhere else. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I ended up here.
That's awesome. Is there anything in particular about it that really I guess, surprised you outside of maybe your expectation of it being more the Soviet bloc style country and being quite different, but in terms of maybe the culture, or just were there any parts of the experience that you really had to get used to and perhaps that you weren't really prepared for?
Yeah, I mean, I think because of course, it was kind of like this Soviet style place for such a long time, and it's only kind of been out of that since the '80s. So one thing I kind of had to um, funny thing to kind of balance is like this old style Budapest and this new style Budapest. When I was working
Mm.
in the kindergarten as a teacher, I was working a whole lot with people who were in their 50s and 60s, even a little bit older. So they had a different mindset compared to someone who was in
Mm.
their 20s and 30s. Of course, a typical difference in mindsets from someone from the 20s to someone in their 70s, but then you kind of have this people in their 20s who they're speaking English, they're
Mm.
going out to clubs that's more free, it's a little bit more liberal and free there. So kind of going in between of like working with my Hungarian colleagues who perhaps maybe had a different mindset. Of course, not to generalize, there of course who were a bit more progressive, but um, it was kind of funny to deal with that in between. And I think it's you kind of see it everywhere,
Right.
and even the buildings and in politics. And I say the buildings because there'll be some old building there that are a couple hundred years
Mm.
old, and then right next to it is like a Starbucks. So it's that's something I really had to get used to. Of course, there's other things in regards to
Mm.
like weather, and I've never been in a place so cold before, really. And the language, of course, Hungarian
Yeah.
is Hungarian is like incredibly difficult. I took lessons for a year, and I was able to speak it okay, but it's seriously so difficult. So I think a lot of the standard stuff most people deal with when they move abroad. Um, but I was lucky to be with a really great group of people who helped me with that transition.
Yeah, so digging into that a little bit on the language side, at least to start us off. So, have you found it difficult at all without being able to speak Hungarian fluently? I assume not. I've been there before, twice actually, 1 week each time, and I absolutely loved it. So, I got a sense that it was quite quite cosmopolitan, quite, an incredible place of, as you said, a lot of different people from all over the world. So I imagine, and of course, as you were working originally as an English teacher, it was probably fine without it. But do you feel like maybe you missed anything by not being able to speak it super fluently, or what would you suggest for other people thinking about maybe moving there in the future?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it hasn't been that difficult. In 2016, the city was still kind of growing, like a bit of a boom with this expats moving over there, new teaching programs and stuff like that. So it wasn't so difficult. Of course, being Budapest being as it is, this is the hub of businesses and the international life. Kind of the more you the more you get out of the city center and then things like that, the harder it would be. But then to speak English. But as far as I know, the teachers I know who were working in other cities and towns and even villages in Hungary, English is like a big thing that the young people are learning, and it's really ingrained in the culture. And a lot of the people who I would say a lot of people under the age of 40 probably speak English fairly well. Um, of course, there's some exceptions, but I don't think I wouldn't say I've missed out much because I think kind of where the things I do in Budapest, I'm kind of always surrounded by people who want to be very helpful. Of course, I've missed out on having like the satisfaction of speaking it fluently or having awesome conversations with people who don't speak English. And I was a little bit better at that like a couple of years ago when I was taking those lessons and using it pretty often. But I think if somebody's listening to this and you want to move to Hungary and you maybe Budapest, then you're going to be just fine. Definitely learn
Mm.
the basics, maybe have some fun learning some phrases, but no one's going to be super upset that you can't speak Hungarian perfectly.
And also, how did you get that start with this great group of friends that you mentioned? Were they other fellow expats, locals as well? How did you meet them, and how did your friend group evolve over that time? I know maybe it might look different today than it did when you first arrived, so it'd be interesting to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I first came to Budapest, I really find myself incredibly lucky because I came in with I was part of a teaching program. This program was still fairly young, and so there weren't that many teachers in the program. I think there were only around like 20 to 30 tops, and I think nowadays they're clear. I think they're way over 100 now. But back then it was like a small group of people, and we're all from English speaking countries, Australia, the States, England, South Africa, and so I was able to instantly make friends with these people who just wanted to feel okay in this new city. Um, and that was like my first group, and we really discovered the whole town, together. And, so we would. But the great thing about Budapest is, because they know it's international, there's people from other countries coming in. There are events all the time, and there's bars and stuff in which it's almost made for expats
Hmm.
and remote workers and things like that. So, the International Meeting Point is a very popular party slash gathering that Budapest has. Pre-COVID, I'm sure that they have it now, and they're going to, or at least they're going to relaunch it,
Hmm.
and things like that. But that was a big thing in which you just go up to someone and just say, "Hey, like, where are you from?" And that's it. And then in that time, all my friends were kind of meeting different people in their own ways, and our circle would get bigger, and then I would hang out with this person, friend of a friend. Next thing you know, we're at a party, and then um, it kind of grew like that. And of course, over the years, a lot of these people have left Budapest. Some of them have stayed.
Hmm.
Some are still big social butterflies. Some have been a little more settled, but Budapest still is pretty powerful in its ways to invite people and help you make new friends. I think that's one thing that I miss about like pre-COVID Budapest is just like
Hmm.
seeing like my Facebook feed of like, oh, this event here, this event there. If you're going to go to those, you're gonna meet someone who you think is pretty cool and think you're pretty cool too. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's great.
Right on. And so now that you've been there 5 years, obviously we're still kind of coming out of this pandemic situation. So I know that that's changed things. But how have you seen the city change in that time? And as you said, it's become a bit of a digital nomad hub and an expat, centric place, maybe entrepreneurs and everything in between. So it would be interesting just to hear about what you've seen happen and how it's evolved over the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy to think about because in 2016 I was thinking, wow, it's a booming place and there's so many there's so much stuff happening and so many people are coming here, and then over the 5 years, it's like that was just the beginning. I mean,
Mm,
you a lot of these digital nomads, kind of expats that I know, they're looking at Budapest as like their hub to travel around Europe, and so I know people who were from the Netherlands, from Sweden,
mm,
from Norway, who come here to start brick and mortar businesses to bring franchises from the other countries and set it here in Budapest.
mm.
And then it's wild to I go to a restaurant or something and they don't even speak Hungarian. Like no one in the restaurant speaks Hungarian. They all speak English with each other. And um, it's wild how that is. And with teaching programs kind of popping up around Budapest, as I said, the teaching program I joined, at one point there was only 20, 25 of us. Now there's over 100. I think that's almost like
Oh, wow.
a good way to look at the crazy growth that Budapest has had. And yeah, I mean, if you go
Mm,
to any club or cafe or bar or really any place, bookstore, you're going to find people from everywhere, and it's just grown so much. I think because of platforms like yours and other podcasts and YouTube, people are discovering there are ways to move abroad, in Budapest. So it's crazy to think about because
yeah.
in 2016 I thought, oh man, it's like this, and then I found out it's just the beginning, and it's like, yeah, it's pretty amazing to witness.
Yeah, I bet. So, changing tact a bit to the topic of building your business. So, I know as we've talked about, you were working in this English teaching program. You'd done that originally in Barcelona as well. Then you came here to Budapest, did that for a while. So what made you decide to sort of change your career, and ultimately how did you decide to go into sort of more copywriting and marketing strategy?
Yeah, so after my second year of teaching in Hungary, I signed up for a third year, but then I realized that I was like, one, I wasn't very good at it, and two, I just didn't like it that much. It wasn't something that I wanted to sign up for and just think, oh, well, I'll just do another year because I want to live here. What I really wanted to do was build a career in something that I wanted to do. But I didn't want to move back to the States. I didn't want like an entry level job. I didn't want to go back to school to find something better or bigger or anything. So I just ended up Googling like how to make money online or skills to make money online. Like very typical. I think that's a very groundbreaking piece of story and advice for your audience to listen to. Is I just Googled it, but but that's what I did, and I still didn't have anything to pick. I looked into SEO consulting and I looked into blogging and things like that. But actually, I went to a meetup with the International Meeting Point that I mentioned, and I met a guy there, a young German guy named Finn Lobson. And I think I've mentioned Finn like probably a dozen times on these podcasts, and I hope he hears them. But he told me, he was 20 years old at the time, and he told me, I'm a copywriter. I'm in Budapest for 4 weeks. I'm going to go someplace else. And so I was intrigued with this freelance copywriting. And so I just asked him for some, what is that? Asked for some resources. And then I was like, okay, I think this is it. I don't know. There was something about it that I was like, okay, I think this is the one. And so I kind of became I bought a laptop. I didn't have a laptop at this time. So this whole laptop lifestyle thing, I didn't really know because I didn't have a laptop. And so I did buy it, like a very terrible laptop on like Facebook Marketplace that it would like, unless it was charging, it would die within like 20 minutes. But then, I took that up to be a content writer / copywriter. So I was a bit of a generalist at first. And I created an Upwork profile. I applied to a bunch of different gigs, and none of them replied except one. And it was for like a $5 blog post. And it took me like 4 hours to write 500 words of a $5 blog post. And when the payment came in and it was like, you've been paid $5, I was like, oh my God, I did it. Like I've made it. And I fell in love with that feeling, and I've just been chasing it ever since.
And so what does that look like from there? I mean, it sounds like you've made some big leaps from those humble origins to your business today. So what's the process to go from there? I mean, you get that first $1 or $5, and of course, maybe you're searching for your next 5 or 10 this time, but how do you really make it work? I think, at least from my perspective, a lot of people make this process sound extremely easy and like they snap their fingers, but I want to hear the hard stuff. So tell us how it is.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely hard. It was, especially the first few months, because I went all in, and I told the teaching company, I was like, hey, I want to work part-time. Of course, part-time work means part-time pay, and it already wasn't that much. So I was only consistently making about $200 a month. The school paid for my housing because that was part of the contract. But the first, I would say, 2 months, I had no work. 3 months probably as well, and I was like struggling. I think I lost about like 15, 16 pounds because I was I was just living off of like eggs and bread, and just like one egg in the morning, maybe an egg sandwich for lunch, and like maybe 2 eggs if I really felt like I was, if I really wanted to ball out for dinner. So, I would butter the toast if I was feeling fancy, and it was really, really, really hard, and I had no idea what to do. And of course, there's programs out there, there's courses,
right?
And I wanted to get them, but at that point, they were $500, $600. I didn't have that. I would probably have $150 to my name, per month. So it was really hard. But I kept at it, and I continued working on applying the jobs on Upwork. Another blog post here, maybe a short email task there, a landing page. Eventually I did have a small portfolio albeit a very terrible one, but it was something. And so I was able to leverage that, and yeah, just like just using that to attract better paying clients, not good paying clients, but better paying. So instead of the $5 blog post, the $20 blog post or something like that. But then
Nice.
I would use each project that I would win, and I would just do my very best at it and see if I could put it in my portfolio, if I could get a testimonial. And once you get a couple names on your website or in your portfolio that you create, then it's going to be a lot easier to win those clients over because of the social proof and the credentials that you have. For me, also that helped me out was actually owning the fact that I was a freelance copywriter. So when I started putting it on my social media and my Facebook and my Instagram, I wasn't getting clients yet, but there was a teacher, a parent in the kindergarten that I was working at who he added me on Instagram. And my big break was when he added me and he was like, "Oh, you're a copywriter?" And I was like, "Hey, Adam." I'm like, "Yeah, I am." He's like, "Well, my company's looking for a copywriter. It's based in the States, and we don't pay much, but we need someone." And so he got me an interview. I ended up getting it, and it was with a full contact karate league called Karate Combat, and that was like my first big quote unquote client. I was able to get like $2K a month from them, but it's weird because I was doing something very different from them, from what I was doing and probably what I wanted to do at that time. But even then, I was working with them, but I was still struggling to get clients. I didn't know how to pitch people. And then I guess the thing that really helped me was networking and getting into free Facebook groups, actually having genuine conversations with people and posting on my Facebook regularly and posting in groups regularly. Not necessarily to find clients, but really just to connect. And in doing so, I was able to find better groups, maybe even some paid groups. And of course, clients would contact me for potential work. And then over time, these clients would eventually start being better paying clients to then higher paying clients. And over the years, I also niched down from being a generalist to focusing mostly on email. And even nowadays, I'm more email and writing YouTube ad scripts, which is something that's slightly different from what I was doing several months ago. But always adapting and growing. But that's kind of the story in a nutshell.
Given that you ultimately decided to go into the copywriting side of things and you've niched down in that area, is that something that you found that you really had some natural gifts for, or were you using a lot of different resources and tools and books and videos and courses to be able to really develop your skill set there? Because I'm sure some people listening might be interested in becoming copywriters themselves, but aren't really sure where to start outside of, okay, I graduated from high school or university, I've studied English, or I speak it natively. So where do they go from there?
Yeah, I mean, prior to me, like actually calling myself a copywriter and doing, writing copy, the only experience I had was just writing articles for like the school newspaper. So it was more journalistic writing, but I did love writing. I went to a very writing intensive university and things. The only difference was learning how to be persuasive. So a lot of that was just learning salesmanship and learning from other copywriters. So I know that there are a lot of copy gurus out there who have these $1,000, $2,000 courses, and I don't doubt their value. But you can literally find everything in like the classic copywriting books. And then once the Joe Sugarmans, the Stephen Georges, the John Carltons, those books, that's all you really need to create a foundation. And then after that, it's all about repetition and practice and feedback. So I did get those courses. To be honest, I only went through about 40% of them. I think I'm a pretty bad audio listener and audio learner, so I had to really do to become like a skilled copywriter and get feedback. So if anyone's like interested in building like a copywriting business, doing it as a side hustle or going all in, I would say, of course, if you want to go for the courses, you can. There's definitely some golden nuggets in all of them. But if you want to just start, then just pick up some of the classic copywriting books on Amazon. Read 2 or 3 of them, and then just start practicing and start learning from people on YouTube, free groups. There are plenty of them. So, and that's been my foundation. I've never actually finished a course, and like a copywriting course. As much as that probably displeases some of my mentors and people like that, but it's the only skill I really have is writing. I mean, things about sales and things like that, or even like running the business, I had no experience in.
And have you found that now you're sort of living a quote unquote digital nomad, sort of nomadic life? Or are you really still, I mean, of course, in the situation, it's difficult to travel, but as you were getting into it and as you were making plans for the future, were you planning to be quite more nomadic or rather just stay around Budapest and live your life there?
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I was definitely planning on being a bit more nomadic. So I love having Budapest as my base. And my girlfriend also works from home as well, and she works online. So we're very open to bouncing around, going to different countries and things like that. So we were in Mexico for the first part of this year, and we were very nomadic there. Kind of, we didn't stay in any town or in any city for longer than 3 weeks at a time. And so, yeah, I mean, when it's like officially free to go, I think we're going to be traveling around all over. The plan is to go to Asia, of course, make another move in Europe, and just see what we can do. I think right now travel is open for certain groups of people, and yeah, just waiting for our turn to kind of not really think about it, because I think right now we can probably travel, but then you have to take into consideration vaccines, or if this country is actually letting people in, or things like that. So we're just looking forward to that day.
It's complicated still.
It's still complicated. It's probably even more complicated. I think 4 months ago it was like you definitely can't go anywhere, and now it's oh, you can go, but you can't go if you're American, or you can't go if you're vaccinated or unvaccinated rather. So it can be pretty tricky.
Yeah, agreed. And that's how we're kind of looking at it too. Is there's so many places that we'd love to go, but just your eyes start crossing as soon as you look at all the caveats, all of the requirements, and yeah, hopefully things will become clearer and easier in the near future. But as you've grown your business, do you have any main, I guess, key takeaway if you were to pick one, or if you have a couple, that's fine as well, but really about being able to grow your business and be able to be more working remotely, even as you said you were able to do in Mexico, balancing the travel with the work and still trying to reach your, professional goals, your revenue targets, all of these things. Any key takeaways that you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the main takeaways is to find that community of people who make your dream, normal. Whether it's you want to have a $10,000 a month copywriting business, whether you want to have an agency, or you want to be a digital nomad or an expat. If you join a community in which that's normal, then it makes it so much easier, because you start connecting with people who they answer your questions, and they don't make you feel crazy for wanting that, and they make it really possible. It's one of the great things about meeting someone like you was because you were part of like this next dream I've had. Instead of me kind of thinking, oh, I want to move here and move there, it's like meet David. David's about to make my dream come true. That's awesome. That's part of that's meeting people. That's getting to know them. As networking. That's an example. So whether it doesn't matter really what you want to do, is to find that community and find those people who can help you, and they can be friends too. I've had some friends who are we're still in we're still up and coming copywriters, but we're still all quite successful. But that's because we've made it our normal. So, and then I would say number 2 would probably be to always take time for yourself. There's no point in having like an awesomely successful business if you're incredibly unhappy and if you're stressed out all the time. And to take care of yourself always, and that's advice as a human to another human, but also from someone who, as a business owner to even maybe a fellow business owner, to take care of yourself. And then 3 is just to be patient. I mean, if you talk to enough people and you follow the system and a process, then building your business to whatever you want it to be, or moving abroad, it's going to happen. So yeah, I think those would be the 3 points.
Yeah, right on. And I guess going into a bit of sort of your next plans, as that was one of my upcoming questions, to the extent that you're interested in sharing, it sounds like maybe you've got some new plans on the future. So if you could tell us a bit about what you're thinking about and why you're making those decisions today, that would be great.
Yeah. So my plan right now in regards to like life is to actually move out of Hungary, because I've been here 5 years. I absolutely love this place. But it's time for me to kind of move on and discover a new place. So I'm looking for, by February 2022 to be moving to Lisbon, Portugal, and to kind of have, the Mediterranean life back. I did live in Spain previously, and to kind of experience that and live that life. But then I also want to balance that with, having my home base in Portugal, but then the ability to be more nomadic, to travel for 2-3 months at a time, and go to Asia and to travel around Europe and South America, while also still maintaining and growing my business, and even helping others who want to become nomadic copywriters, and helping them with that process as well. So that's the plan right now. Nothing's set in stone. I probably need to write this down in a journal or something somewhere, but that's the vision right now.
Awesome. I love it. And glad to be playing a part in that, seeing your success and continued growth and development personally and professionally. But to that end, if our listeners are interested in finding out more about you and keeping track of what you're up to and your future adventures around the world and here in Portugal, where can they find you?
Yeah, well, if you want to find me on my website, you can find me at storiesandcopy.com. I send emails to my email list a few times a week. I'm trying to do it more often, but you can also just find me on Facebook or Instagram, and stay in touch, because I plan on having a book coming out pretty soon. So be on the lookout for that. And thank you so much, David, for having me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for sharing your story, and it's been awesome to hear about your experiences. Look forward to following you on social media and see where you're headed. Thanks again for joining us today, Francis, and take care.
Cheers.
Hey guys, don't forget to like our video, subscribe to our channel, and leave your comment below. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Expat Empire. We help people to move abroad through our personalized consulting services. For more information, check out expatempire.com. Thanks, and see you soon.